turn a peaceful nuclear program into military. The minute they find this, and it's very early on, sometimes late 73, they put the stop on any sale of nuclear material to Iran. And this embargo essentially goes on until 77. Like Iran's nuclear program at that time, under the Shah and under Khomeini, when the United States put the brakes on, there were other countries who were willing to make the deal. Under the Shah, Germany and France were very eager to jump into the market. German government immediately passed a law guaranteeing 100% investment for any company, nuclear company, investing in Iran, because they thought with the US out, they can get a bigger share of this market, and they did. They were the first one to sign a contract for Bush. By 1977, there are different pressures, you can see it in these documents, being brought on the White House to change its position. There are pressure from American companies. Westinghouse, for example, hires Mr. Helms, the head of the CIA, one-time ambassador to Iran, as its lobbyist to lobby the government to change the laws. Westinghouse wanted to get into the business in Iran. The Defense Department is pressuring the White House to change, because the Defense Department is being told essentially by the Shah that if you don't change your policy, if you pressure me too much on this, I'm going to put everything on the table. And everything meant, amongst other things, two very critical sites that the Defense Department and the CIA were running in Iran, monitoring Soviet nuclear activity. One of the most sensitive sites was a completely confidential site in Iran's Caspian coast. They placed all of them in what are called royal hunting grounds, so that nobody can have access to them. And it was very crucial for the US and very crucial for Britain. These centers were manned by the US, or womanned by the US and the British, who also had a site. The reports never reached Iran. Occasionally, the head of these centers would make a visit to the Shah and make a perfunctory gesture at giving a report of what they had found. But this was an operation entirely manned by the US and by the British. And the Defense Department was basically told that you might lose these privileges. Suffice it to say, if you want to know how important these bases are, there is very good documentary evidence that the Soviet incursion into Afghanistan was partially, at least, caused by their belief that the loss of these two bases in Iran is so significant that they, the Americans, are going to try to find a place in Afghanistan to replace it, and will make a preemptive attack. Americans will make a preemptive attack or do something in Afghanistan. The Soviets did not want to have that happen, and thus the preemptive, disastrous effort. So the State Department is pressuring the White House to reconsider the deal. Now, the Shah was going, as I said, full force for a wide range of programs, including plutonium processing, including full enrichment cycle. And the United States was making offers that today are now called the Russian model. The Russian model being that Iran can enter into an agreement with Russia to enrich uranium somewhere outside Iran under joint management of Russian and Iranians. This is to make sure that the enriched uranium doesn't end up in a bomb. Exactly that same idea was proposed to Iran. At this time, it was to be Westinghouse that was going to invest. It was, at that time, a $300 million joint effort. And the Shah remained very reluctant to sign anything that he said, and this is almost verbatim quoting, he said, if there is anything that other countries have not signed, I will not sign. I will not give any extra guarantees. But I do want the US to enter amongst other people who was entering on behalf of the Shah was Henry Kissinger, trying to convince the White House. And this is both the Ford White House as well as the Carter White House. So by mid-77, both the Shah and the White House begin to soften their position a little bit. And they reach an agreement that would allow US companies to begin investing in Iran. But by then, the domestic situation is beginning to become problematic for the Shah, and the issue of the nuclear is put on the back burner, and it never is picked up again, at least not by the Shah. The next time it's picked up is by Ayatollah Khomeini, and I've told you already what has happened there. The second issue that has, I said there are three issues that have caught international attention. The second issue is Iran's regional role. Here too you would find surprising continuities as well as some ruptures in the Shah's policies as well as in Iran. There is a common perception that Nixon came to the White House in 1969 and developed the Nixon Doctrine. And according to the Nixon Doctrine, Iran was chosen to be the gendarme of the region. That was the dominant perception. Almost everybody accepts this premise. The evidence indicates that that is not the way the Nixon Doctrine actually happened. The evidence overwhelmingly indicates that long before Nixon had even announced his presidency, because remember in 1962, Nixon lost the gubernatorial election. He went out saying, you don't have Nixon to kick around anymore, and called the newspaperman a son of a bitch, and everybody thought that that's the end of his political life. Well, like a phoenix, he rose again. But before he rose again in 66, in 65, as soon as Iran learns that Britain has plans to leave the Persian Gulf and end its military bases in the whole east of Eden territory, from Egypt to the Persian Gulf, the Shah makes it very clear immediately that Iran is going to replace Britain as the dominant military force in this area. Britain is very much against the idea. Britain tries from 65 to 68 to, in the word of one document, disabuse the Shah of the illusion, I'm almost verbatim quoting them, that Iran is going to be allowed to become the dominant force. Britain was opposed to it because Britain was very much invested in the Sheikdoms, in the United Arab Emirates, what became United Arab Emirates, in Bahrain, in all of these countries, and all of the Arabs of the region were very much opposed to Iran becoming the dominant region. Saudi Arabia was adamantly opposed to it. But the Shah insisted. And when Nixon makes a trip to Iran in '66 in preparation for his presidential bid, he has a 4-hour conversation with the Shah at the embassy in Tehran, where he basically lays out what his plans are. He says to Nixon that you are overstretched. Remember, this is the Vietnam era. You are overstretched. This is the era of U.S. having problems with dollars, the euro pressure. This is the era where U.S. ended the equivalency of dollar to gold, the end of the Bretton Woods area. This is a period the U.S. is under enormous international pressure. The Shah basically says, you can't do what you've been doing. You're overstretched. We will and can become the dominant force in this region. We will do what you would have done. You want to fight communists? We will fight communists. You want to fight nationalist radical insurgencies? We'll do it. And by the time Nixon comes, he very much agrees to this model and develops it into a much larger model with the help of Kissinger. And Iran becomes the dominant force in the region. The Shah is keenly interested in developments in two countries at the time. One is Afghanistan, the other one is Iraq. In both,